Hello everyone, in today's video I will be reviewing Batman Begins. After Batman and Robin failed at the box office, Warner Brothers canceled the fifth Batman movie after when Batman and Robin was harshly disliked by critics and audiences. We had to wait 8 years for another Batman movie to be made, and honestly, it was well worth the wait. Warner Bros. At this point was looking to reinvent the franchise, reboot the series, and make a fresh new Batman movie. Instead of making Batman a kids movie, they decided to go back to the darker roots of Batman. But before Batman Begins, in the early 2000s, there were rumors about other possibility of other Batman films that never came to be. Like, for example, there were rumors about Darren Aronofsky directing a Batman Year One based on the Frank Miller graphic novel. Also in the early 2000s, there was rumors about a possibility of an early Batman vs. Superman movie way before the Zack Snyder 2016 film. Batman Begins is a reboot. It's not set in the same continuity as the same as the Tim Burton / Joel Schumacher Batman movies. Batman Begins was directed by Christopher Nolan. Around this time, he was a upcoming new film director. Prior to this, he directed movies like The Following, which was a student film he made at the time, Memento, Insomnia. He would go on to direct movies like The Prestige, Inception, Interstellar, Dunkirk, and recently The Tenant. He also did the screenplay to this movie. The movie was produced by Charles Rowan, Emma Thomas, Nolan's wife, Larry Franco. The story and the screenplay was written by David S. Goyer, who did the Blade movies prior to this. And the music was done by Hans Zimmer. Batman Begins is a reimagining and retelling of Batman. Bruce Wayne travels to the Far East. Bruce meets Henry Ducard, a member of the League of Shadows. After Bruce's training, Ducard reveals the motivation and purpose of the League of Shadows to destroy Gotham City because of the crime and corruption. Bruce refuses to join the League of Shadows, goes back to Gotham to protect people, clean up the streets of Gotham City without murdering criminals, and bringing them to justice instead. Bruce has help from Alfred and Lucius Fox, a tech expert at Wayne Enterprises. Hence, a Batman is born. I love this movie. It was a great reinvention of Batman and rebound after Batman and Robin. The cast in this film are terrific and great. It was a breath of fresh air to the Batman series. This is one of my favorite Batman movies of all time. What's also great about this movie is the reboot does not copy Tim Burton's Batman. Christopher Nolan made Batman his own without copying his shot-for-shot remake type. Instead, he made this more of a reimagination. Not like how you see these days in films with reboots and remakes. Christopher Nolan also made the movie very more spiritual to the comic books. Being a die-hard Batman fan that I am, watch this movie, you can tell that Nolan had a lot of inspiration from popular Batman comic books like Year One and The Long Halloween. Especially how they used the gangster Carmine Falcone character. Nolan brought realism to Batman. He really made Batman more true to the comic books. It's funny if you watch The Following, which is one of Nolan's first movies he did when he was a student. There's an Easter egg foreshadowing of a Batman logo in the background. I like how Nolan told the story at the beginning of the flashback scene was not just telling it straightforward on Bruce Wayne's origin and how he became Batman. The look of Gotham City was an upgrade compared to the Schumacher Gotham City look. I like how brown and surreal the look of Gotham City looks, giving it a surreal-like atmosphere. It never occurred to me how this movie's a bit of a social commentary based on reality with some realism at the same time. Like post 9/11, for example. You can point out the League of Shadows as terrorists, also reflects on economics. But of course, Nolan made up a fantasy comic book series that had people feel the escapism. Also how at the time, after 9/11, people were afraid of terrorism around this time period. I saw this movie when it came back in 2005 when I was 11 years old at the time. My parents took me to see this in the movie theaters after graduating from 6th grade going to middle school. This was my graduation present reward. It was the second time in my life I saw a Batman movie in the movie theaters, and my mind was blown away. I walked out happy, satisfied, excited for more, jazzed up. It also gave me an adrenaline rush, which is hard to describe on why. But at the time when this movie came out, I thought this was a prequel when it came out, not understanding what the term reboot, remake meant until I saw this movie. People thought that you had to watch the other Batman movies before this movie. People were way far off from that. That's the beauty of the Nolan movies. You can watch these movies without having seen the first 4 Batman films and the Schumacher and Tim Burton movies. I love how in this movie, Christopher Nolan tells a great story on Bruce Wayne's background. I'm not gonna lie, I'll give Nolan credit this. I'm glad that Joker was not the one who killed Bruce Wayne's parents in this movie, unlike the Tim Burton '89 Batman film. I think he did the origin storytelling better in this movie. Also, how when Bruce Wayne grows up, he wanted to kill Joe Chill for murdering his parents. After visiting Carmine Falcone, Falcone tells Bruce the corruption behind the justice system. He travels the world. Bruce is lost, confused, and when he travels, he feels responsible for his parents' deaths. Descartes finds him in the prison camp. Purges his fear, and trains him. When Descartes trains him, he's trained to become a crime fighter, what to expect. After Bruce is trained, Descartes wanted to make Bruce Wayne a member of the League of Shadows. Bruce refuses to join the League of Shadows because he knows killing and murder is not the answer to justice. Bruce Wayne refuses to kill because of how revenge was not the right thing after when Joe Chill was murdered by Falcone. This is his motivation for not killing in the rest of the Batman series of the Nolan trilogy. Liam Neeson as Henry Descartes and Ra's al Ghul is great. It was a great twist to see how he was the real Ra's al Ghul, and the one that Bruce met up in the mountains was a decoy. In the comic books, Ra's al Ghul is a supernatural. In this movie, he's not. Ra's al Ghul is a character who believes that all of Gotham City is corrupt, and he believes that everyone deserves to die. Bruce tries to persuade him that not everyone in Gotham is corrupt, that there are still good people in Gotham. But Ra's al Ghul does not see it that way. It's weird saying that you understand his point of view and that you understand his motivations, but at the same time, his motivations are all wrong though. Christian Bale's Batman was really good. He was dark, intimidating, brutal, tough, and a beast. Unlike the Burton Schumacher Batman movies, Batman has his code of not killing in this movie throughout the rest of the Nolan trilogy. And also, compared to this movie and the rest of the series, he does have a deep, dark voice, but not as much like in the rest of the sequels. Christian Bale's Batman talks in a deep voice when he's interrogating and intimidating his enemies, which that works. But he talks in a regular deep voice when talking to Jim Gordon or Rachel. It's understandable that he uses the voice trying to cover up his Bruce Wayne voice so no one knows he's Batman. and his Bruce Wayne charming voice would not work to intimidate his enemies. In this movie, he's not as bad compared to the rest of the sequels with his voice. After a while in the sequel, the deep voice kind of got annoying to a certain degree, which I'll explain in the next videos. I love Batman's first appearance when he takes down Falcone's men only one by one. One of the thugs is shooting and scared and shouts, "Where are you?" Batman is right behind and whispers, "Here." Batman smashes the car, says to Falcone, "I'm Batman," and he hits his head on Falcone. "Nice coat." Especially how Carmine Falcone was a real evil bastard piece of shit who deserved to be behind bars. It goes back to another commentary on the corruption behind the justice system because of Carmine Falcone's power and money controlling the system going his way. I love the final showdown fight between Batman and Ra's al Ghul fighting on the train. Ra's thinks Batman was going to kill him. Batman says, "I won't kill you, but I don't have to save you." It shows how Batman learned from his mistake of saving me for the first time and did not want to make the same mistake again. One other thing I like about Christian Bale is Bruce Wayne. He's charming, charismatic, humorous, a smooth talker. He really nailed it as Bruce Wayne, billionaire playboy. I like it when he goes out to a dinner hotel with two European supermodels. He has a conversation on Batman, and he says, "A guy who dresses up as a bat clearly has issues." The way he said it sounded made me think about Patrick Bateman in American Psycho for some reason, even though it's a completely different film, though, and story. The manager is some guy who works at the hotel. The two European models are swimming in the pool. He says that the pool's for decoration, not for swimming, and he says you have to leave, and Bruce is like, "I'm buying this hotel. We're going to make some changes around here." He runs into Rachel, and she's like, "What are you doing?" He responds, "Swimming," because it's funny and awkward. Because they haven't seen each other in a long time since the whole, Falcone conversation. I want to point out, before Christian Bale played Batman, he did a movie prior to this called The Machinist, where he played a crazy insomniac. He was extremely skinny in that movie. It's crazy to see how he went from being an extremely skinny guy to bulking up so fast as Batman. I once watched a behind-the-scenes documentary on the making of Batman Begins. Nolan said when he first met Bale, he told him you need to bulk up fast and get big as fast as you can because Batman is not a skinny guy. When Christian Bale got so big, he was a little chunky at first, but then he slimmed down just a little bit. Even Bale's like, "Oh, crap." He also said, in an interview that, some, film producers that he worked on other films were, looking at him like, "Bloody hell, Chris, what are we doing here, Fat Man or Batman?" Michael Caine as Alfred is great in this movie. He's probably my favorite actor to have played Alfred ever in a Batman film. I love his chemistry he has with Christian Bale as Bruce Wayne. I love his funny sarcasm jokes and how he's like a second father to Bruce after all he's been through. He's loving, caring, concerned, kind, and generous. Worried and concerned, making sure that Batman is not taking over Bruce's life. He wants Bruce to be happy after all he's been through. And no matter how crazy Bruce's life has been or his mistakes and flaws, he's never given up on Bruce and always believed in Bruce no matter what. Morgan Freeman as Lucius Fox is great. He's like Bruce Wayne's James Bond's M. I love how when he helps Bruce with gadgets and shows him the Tumblr vehicle, it becomes the Batmobile. When they were testing out the Tumblr Batmobile, Lucius Fox asks Bruce, "So what does he think?" And Bruce responds, "Does it come in black?" Just like Alfred, humorous, sarcasm, funny moments with Bruce. When Richard Earls fires him, Lucius gets another job fast, taking over Earl's job at Wayne Enterprises. On a personal story as a kid, I had almost all the Batmobile toys from the cartoon, the movies, but this is the one Batmobile toy I did not have as a kid. This is the last time I had collected Batman toys, because I was hitting a point in my age in my life where I was done collecting toys around this time period when this movie came out. Gary Oldman as Jim Gordon is great in this movie. Unlike in the Burton Schumacher movies, Patton was a good actor and no disrespect. They did not give him much to do in those movies. He really was just a side character. In this movie, they did a great job giving him a great character development arc. In my opinion, he's the best actor today to have played Commissioner Gordon. I love how we see when Bruce is a kid, he's at the police station headquarters after his parents were murdered. Gordon comforts him. Because we see how he started out as a police officer when years later he's a sergeant who believes Batman is doing the right thing. Jim Gordon helps Batman get Rachel out of Arkham, and he helps Batman shoot the Gotham City bridge to prevent the water supply with the fear toxins being exposed and killing all of Gotham City. Batman trusts Jim Gordon because of him being there by his side when his parents were murdered, and how he really wants to bring down the corruption and bring criminals to justice. It's funny when Jim Gordon sees Batman's Batmobile, I like his response, "I gotta get me one of those." Just priceless the way he said it. Rutger Hauer in this movie, his character is not a bad guy. He's the kind of character that was trying to trick Bruce Wayne, falling into a trap, buying the wrong stocks, and trying to take over Wayne Enterprises. Katie Holmes as Rachel was good. She was basically Bruce's connection to his past and childhood. She's a lawyer trying to bring down Carmine Falcone. Her performance was good, but it's really like nothing special. She was a good character. She basically keeps Bruce's balance. In the end, when you think she was going to be Bruce's girlfriend, she turns him down because she wants Bruce, not Batman. She thinks that Batman is a monster and will be with him one day when Batman is no longer needed in Gotham anymore. As a side note, I know that Katie Holmes was very well known for Dawson's Creek, which I'd never seen. Also around this time period, I remember when this movie was coming out, she was dating Tom Cruise at the time. Cillian Murphy, as you all know from the actor from 20 Days Later, plays a scarecrow. He's great. He's a real sleazy bastard, very despicable. He does a good job as Jonathan Crane being calm, intelligent, and a sophisticated doctor. But behind closed doors, he's a real evil person, unhinged and sadistic. Crane abuses his position at Arkham Asylum. When he puts fear toxins in Carmine Falcone, it shows how he enjoys the power of putting the fear gas in all of Arkham's patients. Even though I really do like this movie, I do have like one minor complaint, but it's very minor, not that big of a deal, is that there was no showdown between Scarecrow and Batman. When he goes full Scarecrow at the end, when he's on the horse, fire's coming out of his mouth, that was cool. I don't know why, for some reason it made me think about Sleepy Hollow for some reason. He's scaring the people of Gotham who've been exposed to the fear toxins, and instead of a showdown between Batman, Rachel zaps him in the face. Now, don't get me wrong, not that I'm saying it was great of Rachel to defend herself, what Crane did to her. I still would like the little showdown between Batman and the Scarecrow. A lot of people complain that he was not the main villain in this movie like we thought he was. I can see why. I was the same way too, because I did not know anything about Ra's al Ghul until this movie, the 90s cartoon. When they were promoting marketing this movie, when they said the Scarecrow was going to be the villain, my first thought was, oh, okay, Scarecrow's going to be the main villain in this film. And boy, was I wrong about that. Even though, again, I really do love this film, but sometimes even like a good movie can still have its like flaws and minor complaints. Like, for example, like one minor complaint I have about this film are the action editing scenes. They're a little bit confusing and hard to understand what is going on, and they're a little bit messy at times. Sometimes I wonder because Nolan had no idea how to film an action fight scene choreographs, because his previous films, there were no fight scenes. This movie has great comeback liners, like when Roz and Bruce are training on ice. Roz says, "You never learn to mind your surroundings." Roz smashes and breaks the ice, and Bruce falls. And Batman says it to Roz on the train. After Lucius Fox is fired by Mr. Earl, he asks him, "Did you get the memo?" When Earl gets fired and is replaced by Lucius Fox, he says the same thing. "Did you get the memo? Payback's a bitch." These next lines I want to talk about are not up against the characters, but for more like motivation, lifting spirits, and comfort and encouragement. When Bruce Wayne's father says, "Why do we fall?" "So we can learn to pick ourselves up." After when the mansion burns down, Alfred tells him the same thing. Rachel tells Bruce it's not what you do underneath, it's what you do that defines you. Bruce says it to Rachel as Batman. Rachel realizes who Batman is. This is just a great movie that I could talk about forever with so many great moments and lines. It's another Batman movie I'll never get tired of rewatching over and over again. It's one of my favorite Batman films ever. Even though it's one of my favorite Batman films, but it's sad how like this movie gets like overshadowed by The Dark Knight, which I'm going to be talking about next. Alright, so what are your thoughts on Batman Begins?
Batman Begins is the rebirth of the new Batman, and I was really impressed with it. Things that were markedly different than the other ones were one was the score. You know, it was a completely different approach to the music, which I thought was really effective. And I really liked the way the murder of the parents was portrayed, and his fear of bats and it being in the cave with all the bats flying around him. I thought those were great images that were portrayed in the movie. And then you have Christian Bale, you know, who was terrific as Batman. I mean, he really prepared for the role, you can tell. And it was also a good balance of showing him as Bruce Wayne, and how his really his disguise basically, or his ability to fool people into thinking that he's this playboy and not caring about anything, which he had to do to take the possible suspicion of him being Batman. Then, you know, the other thing that I really liked, I think there's a great interaction between Michael Caine as Alfred and him. I think that really, they play off each other very well. And there's some humor to that, and I thought that worked really well.
What do you think of like the rest of the cast of this film? Like, you know, Caine and Morgan Freeman as Lucius Fox.
Yeah, I think Lucius Fox addition to the Batman saga is great. You know, Morgan Freeman is always great.
Yes,
and he's very effective, and that's also interesting. You know, the interplay between the two of them, and the gadgets and everything.
Yeah.
The Batmobile, which is more like a tank than a car.
That was the only Batmobile toy I didn't have as a kid, because at that time I was done with collecting toys when the film came out.
And I'll tell you, the action sequences are amazing in that film. You know, the way Batman drives the thing when he gets pushed into the head of it, and
right.
I thought that was.
What did you think of Gary Oldman as Jim Gordon compared to Pat Hingle?
Yeah, I think that you know, Pat Hingle. It's not Pat Hingle's fault, but in the Burton series, he's really a very minor character. You really don't go into his history at all. Where I think it's really good that they decided to give Commissioner Gordon more of a backstory, and you got to see, you know, his family life, and or at least, you know, his life outside of being the commissioner, and so I really like that a lot.
Were you familiar with Ra's al Ghul before this movie, or?
Yes, I had read the Ra's al Ghul comics when I was younger. So I don't know if they followed that exactly.
Not. I mean, in the comic book, he's a supernatural, but in this film, he's just a regular person, like who's not like over an ancient person.
Yeah, and I don't know how much of that initial part where he's training him and that sort of thing.
Well, that was made up for the movie, of course.
Yeah. I didn't think that was part of Ra's al Ghul, but
No.
I thought that was good. I thought it was. I thought that was very well done.
Would you also say at the time it was a breath of fresh air after Batman and Robin at the time?
Oh yeah, definitely. It was so. It was a breath of fresh air.
Right.
Mm-hmm.
So that was my review of Batman Begins. Like the video, subscribe, the notification bell to get the latest updates on my YouTube channel. I'll see you again next time. Stay tuned for my Dark Knight movie review.